This video explains what is covered in Part 2 of the Northwestern IFCA Cockle Fisheries Management Plan. It is the part most likely to be of interest to industry members, who may want to feedback on the proposed management. Part 2 details how the fishery will be managed, and can be found on pages 61 to 75 of the document. It introduces new criteria for opening or closing fisheries. It specifies an amount of cockle that is needed for each fishery to open, and a total allowable catch limit. Throughout this video, wherever you see the eye symbol, it indicates where in the document you should look if you want further information. The next part of this video will cover the most important points for consideration. Table 21, on page 64 of the document, sets out the minimum amount of cockle that is needed for each fishery to open. The first criteria considered in the table is the minimum amount of cockle that needs to be left untouched, to provide food for birds, and to support the following season's fishery. The amount includes both size and undersize cockle. For Morecambe Bay, the total amount of cockle that must be left untouched is 10,000 tons. For Liso, it is 800 tons, and for Penfold in Southport, it is 1,500 tons. No threshold has been provided for the Solway, as we don't currently have enough information on its cockle stocks. When officers carry out their yearly surveys, the first thing they will ask is the total amount of cockle in each area greater than these numbers? If the answer is no, then the fishery will be recommended closed. If the answer is yes, they will move to the next stage. The second criteria considered in the table is the minimum amount of size cockle that needs to be left on the bed. Size cockle is anything retained by a riddle, as specified in Bylaw 3. Having a minimum amount of size stock left untouched is important, as they will breed and contribute to future fisheries. For Morecambe Bay, the total amount of size cockle that must be left untouched is 4,000 tons. For Liso, it is 800 tons, and for Penfold in Southport, it is 900 tons. No threshold has been provided for the Solway due to lack of data. How did we come up with these numbers? Northwest IFCA looked at trends in the cockle stocks from the past 9 years of survey data. They also looked at previous recommendations and minimum cockle thresholds for other, similar UK fisheries. The following section demonstrates how we calculated the limits for Morecambe Bay as an example. The graph shows the total amount of cockle present in Morecambe Bay each year since 2017. Green bars show the years the fishery was recommended open, and the red bars show when the fishery was recommended closed. The lowest amount of cockle a fishery was previously opened was 11,000 tons in 2017. That same year, the fishery removed just over 1,000 tons of cockle, bringing the total amount down to just under 10,000 tons. If the proposed 10,000-ton limit had been applied to the past 9 years, all previously recommended fisheries would still have been opened. Please note, these figures are based on a September fishery. The second graph shows the total amount of size cockle in Morecambe Bay since 2017, and the amount removed each fishing season. Green bars show the years a fishery was recommended open, and the red bars show when the fishery was recommended closed. The orange bars show the amount of cockle removed by fishing. The lowest amount of size cockle a fishery has previously been recommended open was 4,600 tons in 2019. Therefore, if the proposed 4,000-ton size limit had been applied to the past 9 years, all previously recommended fisheries would have still been opened. Similar rationale is provided for the proposed thresholds for Liso and Penfold, further details of which can be found on pages 65 and 67 of the document. For Liso, the minimum threshold of 800 ton has been historically agreed with Natural England from bird food model calculations. If survey results show the amount of cockle available is greater than the amount shown in the table, then officers will look to open the fishery. However, it won't be sensible to open if these limits are only exceeded by a small amount, as the total allowable catch would be very small, offering little profitability to industry, and risking too much being removed before officers could close the fishery. Therefore, a minimum total allowable catch has been proposed for each area. These TACs were calculated using the average catch removal rates of fishes from previous fisheries. For Morecambe Bay, the minimum TAC is 400 tons. For Liso and Penfold in Southport, it is 300 tons. The final consideration is the addition of a buffer. A buffer provides a safety net, so that even if the TAC was exceeded, the amounts of cockle needed to be left on the bed won't fall below the minimum amount. Therefore, a buffer of 10% of the total TAC is proposed for each fishery. In summary, for a bed to be opened, it must have enough size stock to support the minimum TAC and the buffer. Using Morecambe Bay as an example, for the fishery to be opened, there needs to be over 10,000 tons of total cockle present, of which more than 4,400 tons must be size. This number is the minimum amount that needs to be left, plus the TAC. Once an area has enough stock to be opened, the next stage is to determine the flexible permit conditions. Pages 72 to 74 describes how officers will make recommendations on these. When determining flexible permit conditions, officers will consider the following points. 1. What areas should be opened? Using Morecambe Bay as an example, officers will need to decide which beds to open. This will be done by looking at the amount of stock available, the size composition of cockle on each bed, and consultation with industry. The composition of cockles relates to the range of different sizes that may be found on a bed. It's important to consider, because fishers can disturb younger cockle when removing the larger ones. It can also increase the chances of non-compliance with the minimum landing size. To avoid this, officers may recommend a portion of the bed remains closed. 2. Officers will determine limits on days or tides that the fishery will be opened. This will also be discussed in consultation with industry. Limitations will be considered when total allowable catch limits are low, or if there are any other monitoring concerns. Lastly, officers may need to consider additional changes to the fishing equipment that could be used, or access routes allowed. Thank you for watching this summary of Part 2 of the Management Plan. Do you have any thoughts on the management proposed? If so, we would like to hear from you. If you would like to provide feedback, please fill out the questionnaire provided on our website. For more details, or if you have any questions, you can read the full document on our website at www.nw-ifca.gov.uk.